One of the most bizarre phenomenons in this world is how much we are influenced by media. Media in all forms, from music to anime to TV shows, films and books, can quickly alter our personalities as well as manipulate our emotions with its compelling and frankly beautiful worlds and characters. I know for a fact that after watching Cyberpunk Edgerunners, I probably wasn't the only one who curled up in bed and refused to speak to anybody for a week, at the very least. In fact, the studio behind Cyberpunk, Studio Trigger, is actually a really good example of this. My favourite three anime series from them are Cyberpunk Edgerunners, Darling in the Franxx, and Gurren Lagann. Each one of these is beautifully tragic in their own special way. Take Edgerunners, for example. It is above all else a love story, but it's also about David wanting to become more than what he was, and eventually he does reach that point. But just like the Greek tragedy of Icarus, David unfortunately flew too close to the sun, and metaphorically and physically came crashing down. His greed and obsession with cybernetics ultimately led to him losing himself and everybody he cared about, which is exactly what he didn't want to happen. He wanted to become stronger to help everybody around him, and in the end, he lost them all. Darling in the Franxx is also brutal on the heartstrings, to say the least. It's also a love story, but above all else, it's a message of hope. On one hand, you have the struggle of Squad 13 and their eventual questioning of the adults and overcoming of the Klaxors in order to give humanity a fighting chance at freedom, and eventually, in the end, they do. We get to see, later on in the series, the first natural human birth, agriculture growth from nothing, and eventually these kids we've been watching grow up into self-sustaining visages of hope for humanity. On the other hand, you have the relationship between Hero and Zero-Two. Their relationship quite literally gets to the point where in order to kill off the Verm, they both travel together into the unknown of space, abandoning their physical mortal bodies and ascending to spiritual forms, yet still with each other. It's not until right at the end where we actually get a glimpse of hope that they've reincarnated and managed to find each other. It's a sad and somber series, but it's also beautiful in its own way of instilling the idea of hope. Gurren Lagann is personally my favourite of the three, and I would rank that among the top animes of pretty much all time. Its storytelling is quite literally unmatched when it comes to the overall message. You could say Gurren Lagann is about the fight between humans and Lord Genome. You could say it's Guna bait by looking at Yoko, but to me, Gurren Lagann is so much more. It's a story of brotherhood among everything else, and learning to rise up against the odds. It's about being dealt a shit hand and learning to move on from it. In the first few episodes, one of the main characters, Carmina, dies. The character with unmatched charisma and a dream to rise up against the Beastmen, his death rally really does make you feel like your Earth's just been shattered. And nowhere in this show is that shown better than with Simon. His, well, not blood brother, but the closest thing he has to a brother. He sits for days, unresponsive, staring pretty much into space, making sculptures of Carmina. The only person he's ever loved, the only one he has left, has been literally ripped away from him. Yet, when Nia, his love interest, is threatened, Simon learns that he doesn't need to live up to Carmina. He learns that he can be himself, and that he doesn't need Carmina to be the only one believing in himself anymore. And so, Simon takes up the rank of leadership to the Gurren Lagann. He grows into a man that leads humanity into the galaxies to defeat what is an omnipotent evil. He continues Carmina's teachings, and eventually at the end, even with Nia dying in his arms on their wedding day, he makes the sole choice to go into exile. Why? Because humanity needs to learn to grow on its own, without the reliance of one leader. Simon knew that, much like Carmina, he would eventually die, and that everybody he's been with and cares about would be left confused and alone, just like he was when Carmina died. And instead of repeating history, Simon stepped aside into a peaceful life to allow everyone to learn to move on and fend for themselves. The same thing that Carmina unintentionally did to Simon. I guess you could go deeper and say, the spirals are only going to exist because, Simon exists and some bullshit like that, but ultimately I think it is more than just that. I think Simon knew this and he made the effort so that everybody can move on. Gurren Lagann is a beautiful story of resilience and moving on and passing along a legacy. Most people think Simon's ending is stupid and that he made a mistake, but I disagree. Simon's story is a beautiful cycle of moving on. And yes, I know it's not Simon, I know it's Simon, but I'm British. It's safe to say that all forms of media can move us as humans. They can alter our emotions, change our perspectives, alter our personalities, and make us feel things we didn't know that were actually possible to feel. Media can be a beautiful thing that can be passed down from generation to generation. Legacies have been created and upheld through media. But why am I talking about all this in what seems like just another video game retrospective? Well, just like those 3 animes that broke me emotionally, Professor Layton broke me first. I wouldn't be surprised if only a few majority of you have actually heard of Professor Layton. I'm hoping this video reaches the right audience and I can get the Professor Layton fandom, all 6 of you in here, but I would genuinely be surprised if many people have heard of Professor Layton. It was originally released in 2007 for the Nintendo DS and has since spawned 8 games. Well, no, that's technically wrong, it's actually 7, but a new one's coming out at some point. There's also a movie, a Japan exclusive mobile game, a battle royale, board game, crossover, manga, anime, novelization, and various spin-offs. Originally, Professor Layton was created by Akihiro Hino, CEO of Level 5, the studio behind it. Now, Professor Layton is basically a puzzle-solving based series of games surrounding the titular character Herschel Layton and his apprentice Luke Triton, who is essentially Victorian Horrid Henry, as they go around solving mysteries a la Sherlock Holmes or Phoenix Wright. 2 major inspirations to Akihiro Hino in the game's creation, actually. For mine and your sake, I've created a mildly comprehensive list of all the media I'm going to cover. I've tried to include all major media, but it's very possible that I may have missed some niche Japanese exclusive media. The actual series is split into 3 game sections. First is the Golden Trilogy, arguably the best games in the series. Then you have the prequel trilogy, the not as great, but still fantastic in its own right series. And finally, the Mystery Journey spin-off series. We don't like to talk about Mystery Journey that much. This is a light, comprehensive retrospective of all of the Professor Layton media to date. I won't beat around the bush. Before I press on, it's important that I let you know a couple of things. First off, these games were released on the DS in 2008. I have done the absolute most I can to try and make this look pleasing, but do realise it's a DS, okay? We all know how DSs look. Okay, I can't make it much better than this. I mean, I could increase it, but I feel like that would take away from, everything you see on screen. So this is the best I can do, I'm sorry. The gameplay itself is also nothing to write home about. It is, in essence, a point-and-click game with puzzles spread through. But what makes Professor Layton so special and what I wanted to do this video on is its outstanding and quite often dark stories. We'll get there later, but Professor Layton and the Unwound Future is among one of the best stories ever told in any media, period. And the first 2 games, while not as good, are still great games that tug on the heartstrings at times. Where Layton keeps its strengths is in the soundtracks and down-to-earth characters. Each one somehow manages to feel like they're real people with their own motives and personalities. They are really fleshed out. I may get into soundtracks later, but for the most, I'll just say it now. Not a single score in any of these games misses. The soundtrack for nearly every game has been made by Tomohito Nishura, who has pretty much only done the game's soundtracks and not a whole lot else besides some personal projects, which is a shame because he is genuinely a phenomenal composer. Here is a short selection of his work for the games that I personally love. But that's enough sucking off the game's soundtracks though. So, sit back, relax, and let's solve some puzzles with the first game in the Golden Trilogy, Professor Layton and the Curious Village. Chapter 1 starts off as no less than an introduction/tutorial for the Curious Village. Straight from the get-go, we get our first glimpse into the amazing soundtrack and atmosphere of the game just from the title screen. Le Calm Fit will be my name from now on. The story starts properly with Luke writing the player a letter summarising his events with Herschel, which is a nice way to include the player, although personally I've never seen why there needs to be a player at all, to be honest. Still, I respect it, it's a nice sentiment. Luke and Layton are in their little car and talk about the upcoming case. Baron Augustus Reinhold has died, a wealthy man in the Curious Village. In his will, he left a request that whoever finds a golden apple left behind by himself should stand to inherit his entire estate and all assets. Herschel explains that no one in the village, despite looking hard, has been able to find the treasure, or even come close for that matter. Layton laments about not being able to meet the man before his untimely death and states how he suspects that there is more afoot than the letter he receives lets on. The letter being written by Reinhold's wife Dahlia, including a map of the surrounding villages, which nicely sets up the first puzzle of the game. A fitting, simple one just to show players the general idea of how they will work. Layton asks Luke to decipher the map, and we're taken into the main gameplay loop. Each puzzle is set out similarly to what you're seeing now. Some are math-centered, some angles, perception, English, etc. There's a whole wide variety of pretty much everything. Each puzzle offers a point system called picarats. The more times you get it wrong, the less picarats you'll gain. These points can act as a sort of soft lock system later on where you'll be able to talk to someone or go somewhere without the needed amounts of picarats or puzzles solved. After Luke figures out the puzzle, the two set off to the village, and we're greeted once more with this beautiful title, accompanied by this almost Parisian soundtrack. Luke and Layton step out the car at a drawbridge and take in the sights of the city. This frog-looking guy explains that the drawbridge can't be drawn down because you can't figure out the puzzle, and so we do it, and I am ashamed to say I failed first time at the second puzzle of the game. Honestly, I thought about this puzzle way too hard, imagining there was some sort of catch, because sometimes these games do occasionally throw curveballs at you, but also sometimes it's just as simple as using 2 brain cells. My advice, if you actually go on to play this game, would be not to rush the puzzles, and not to take them at face value if you ask me. The city opens up to the two, and they make their way into a street where 2 people will, yet again, act as tutorials on hint coins and the movement mechanic in this game. There's also Layton's trunk, which is like a codex, if you will. You can see correspondence from people, letters, and revisit puzzles for picarats later on. The 3 blacked out options I will talk about as they come. Starchin, this guy, explains hint coins and how they can be found by clicking on suspicious things in the background. Hint coins can, well, be used to open up hints. There's a max of 3 per puzzle you can unlock, and none of them outright give you the answer, they just tell you how to go about solving it in an easier way. Old lady here gives another puzzle, which I really embarrassingly got wrong 3 whole times. Don't worry, I won't cover every single puzzle in the game, or we would genuinely be here forever. I think there's 120 something puzzles in this whole game, we'd be here for a while. If a key puzzle comes up, or one that's extra hard, I'll give it the once over, but for now we've become familiar with the mechanisms, and it's time for Layton and Luke to venture further into the Curious Village. First stop, of course, Reinhold Manor to speak to Dahlia. I just want to mention quickly too, because I can't think of anywhere else to put this in a game, but the game did have at one point bonuses, which include that of a weekly puzzle via the DS Wi-Fi. I did attempt to see if these still worked, but I'm almost certain that the support for this game is long dead. Oh well, I mean I can still appreciate its inclusion, especially for a 2008 game. Hello, Editing Charlie here. I don't know why I looked this fact up, but I did look this fact up. Apparently the DS Wi-Fi support for the Professor Layton and Curious Village ended in 2014, which is from 2008 to 2014. That's quite a lot of fucking support for one game. I've got to give him that. Up ahead is this bozo who basically just tells us to go right, but not before handing us yet another puzzle. Yeah, most of these interactions in the game between people will have them say something along the lines of, "Oh, hey, I don't trust you, here's a puzzle to prove you're who you say you are." Or, "I'll give you the information if you solve this puzzle." Going up right, another dude blocks the way with yet another puzzle. And then further still, the butler dude also has a puzzle. Eventually, after those three, we reach the Reinhold Manor, which doesn't seem that big to me, but what do I know? A cutscene where a bunch of dudes alongside Dahlia are in a meeting room waiting for us, but Claudia, Dahlia's cat, gets spooked and runs away. I'm not joking, the next chapter is pretty much dedicated to finding this cat, because no one will speak to us until we do. Dahlia is she comes across as a bit of a stuck-up arsehole who places her cat and material objects above all. If you ask me, I think she's killed him. I'll be frank, I can't defend the whole writing in these games, specifically in the side characters and pedestrians. This cat section is mostly busy work to pad out the game, but at the same time it is in essence a puzzle game, foremost. So it makes sense that there would be non-crucial parts to pad the game out. I promise you, this concept does get better as the games go on though. Whilst hunting down Claudia, Layton not only visits an inn to get a bedroom for the night, but three more things are introduced. First is the painting. Within the trunk, Layton can now collect painting scraps to form a full picture. One of the three little mini-games I mentioned earlier. It's also here that we are shown our first look at Flora, someone who will become a pivotal member of the cast later on. The second minigame is collecting these little objects and scrap to eventually make this little robot dog dude. Again, doesn't really do much. And also there's finally the inn minigame where you can customize Layton and Luke's bedrooms to add to their happiness with furniture given after completing puzzles. Again, doesn't really do much, but you know, it's just a nice little inclusion of a small collectible system. I mean, it's not that bad. Most of these parts, like I mentioned, can be found by solving puzzles and helping people. Upon leaving the mansion to chase the cat, we get a short cutscene of a shrouded man in a comedically cartoonish suit. This man, I'll spoil it now for you, is Don Paolo, the Moriarty to Layton's Sherlock, if you will. He's a major antagonist in this game and through the games going forward, but that's all I'll say for now on him. Just try to remember the name, if you can't remember the costume. Eventually, Luke and Layton catch up to Claudia and return to the mansion where we get introduced to the absolute best character of all, Professor Layton. There's no question, by the way, that is an inherent absolute fact. Inspector Chelmy. He's here because one of the men in the foyer that was waiting for us, a relative to Baron Reinhold, has been supposedly murdered, while we were away furthering the murderous conspiracy even more. Layton and Luke decide that their next step is to finally talk one-on-one with Dahlia, where Layton assumes the murders to be linked to the grander mystery of the Golden Apple. Our main objective going forward is to find this one dude who is basically just a boat rower for the canal in front of the manor. You know, the guy I mentioned earlier outside of the manor. Chelmy doesn't want anyone in or out of the manor, as everyone now is effectively a suspect, and his disappearance rings off alarm bells, so we once again set off to find him. Before that, Layton looks and comments on a picture of what appears to be the Baron and Dahlia with their baby Flora. Upon asking her about it, she replies that she's never had children. Talking to the butler Matthew downstairs, and he tells us that the Baron married a woman, Viola, who is completely identical in every way to Dahlia, hence the confusion. Flora is indeed the Baron's daughter. After that, we wander around the town for a bit, opening up the northern side eventually. Of course, not much is learnt here about the butler's whereabouts. We do find out, however, that the rumour around the town is that there is a kidnapper. The giant tower from the start of the game also starts almost moaning and grunting, loud enough to piss everyone off. So, right, now there's a murderer, kidnapper, missing butler, and a groaning tower. As Layton puts it, we have the start of some clues. Honestly, there's not much to go about in Chapter 4 more than that. You are technically meant to go explore the town and meet everyone and do puzzles. The game even suggests that, but since there's frankly nothing special about them, I'm just doing the straightforward story. There is also the concept of the House of Puzzles that I neglected to mention earlier. The game has a sort of pseudo day-night cycle, as well as progressive characters. What this means is characters will move after certain points have been reached in the game and may not offer the same puzzles they once did. If we miss any of these puzzles for any reason, they then get sent to the House of Puzzles, where they're available to do it anytime we see fit. This genius mechanic not only prevents softlock outside of the minimum puzzle completion requirement for some sections, as first seen within the clock tower entrance, but also gives us a nice and neat location to tackle harder or missed puzzles all at once instead of running around looking everywhere, where it can take or add to the game depending on how you look at it. Ultimately, the way you explore the village and do things is up to you. There's a set path and story, but the game never holds your hand. You do it however you want, meet every quirky character as you go, solve each puzzle as it's available, or just focus on the story. It's a sort of very tiny, minuscule open world that can reward your exploration, especially if you want to finish the minigames and collect extra parts. Or, if you suck at puzzles and you don't want to look at guides online, you're going to need those hint coins, and there's a lot of them to go around. Also during this section, and again, I don't really have anywhere to put this, but I love Layton's character so much. He's written as this perfect gentleman, and whenever someone is a dick to him, Luke always has something to say, but Layton is just like, don't worry about it, and says it with a smile. It's just his character, but it's what makes him unique, and it's not until later games that we actually get to see him fleshed out and become both more vulnerable and question his own philosophies in the worst ways possible. He really is quite a beautifully crafted character that for right now seems one-dimensional, but I promise this man will go through hell eventually. Luke, on the other hand, is a bit different. He is also not really explored much, save from the third game, where he plays a vital role. Honestly, I cannot dick suck the third game enough. It's absolutely fucking amazing. But first, we're jumping ahead of ourselves, so we need to figure out this curious village first. Not a lot happens on the first night during this chapter. Layton and Luke run around the village solving more puzzles and asking about where Ramon, the butler guy, is. Eventually, as they give up for the night, they catch this previously mentioned old man kidnapper with Ramon unconscious and give chase. They get away as the tower starts erupting and lighting up again. The two go back to the manor to report it to Inspector Chelmy, but Ramon walks in completely fine and unharmed, making Layton seem crazy and accused of interrupting the murder case, which Chelmy also reprimands him for in the next morning. After checking in with Ramon in the morning, Chelmy basically tells us to do one, and so with chapter 5 it's finally time to actually look into the Golden Apple mystery, the whole reason we are here in the first place. When talking to the butler Matthew in the morning, he says that the Baron didn't have many friends, but what the fuck was his name? Zaptron? Yeah, Zaptron. Zaptron may know since he came to the manor a few times, according to Matthew. Zaptron is, of course, of no help at all, and so we talk to Ingrid, this little lady who used to work at the manor as Flora's nanny of sorts, if you will. After that, the case goes cold, and the only option is to hopelessly ask everybody in the village. Not a whole lot goes on in this section as well. I have about an hour and a half of footage of me just running around talking to people and solving puzzles, but yeah, it's busy work. It's what the game is really about. I mean, it's talking to people and getting to know their stories and such, and trying to find clues. And if you like that, then this is the game for you. If not, just look up a fucking guide or something, man. It's still a great story that you can enjoy without doing the puzzles and the busy work. It's great. Eventually, at the market, this butcher guy will try to give us a vase. After telling him it's not ours, the silhouette of Don Paolo can be seen on the upper screen, showing that he's following Layton, so to speak. Once the butcher has finished yapping, a newspaper spawns about Chelmy and one of his successful cases, as well as a lovely picture of him eating cakes with his wife. But wait a second, just a few minutes ago he was shouting at Matthew that he hated cakes. See, right here. So, why would a man who is clearly shown eating cakes and enjoying cakes going around saying he doesn't? After that, a new man appears, Archibald, who is an actual friend of the Baron. He leads Luke and Layton to a little study area of the Baron's, and after some searching and rummaging, an open drawer reveals a blank map with an X, no doubt some sort of coordinates for the next clue. The innkeeper summons Layton and Luke because a guest has supposedly left without paying. We, the player, once again see the silhouette of Don Paolo, and Beatrice describes him to Luke and Layton, who have absolutely no idea who he is. Finally, in this chapter, to wrap things up, the two step outside and Layton finally decides that it's time to go to the tower. This is going to sound like a really stupid rant, but this kind of pissed me off just a little bit. I mean, Imagine this, you are a kind of pseudo-detective going to this village to solve an impossible case. You go to the town and you see a big fucking tall ominous tower that constantly groans and creaks at night. Would your first instinct not to be looking there? Call it a hunch, but maybe, just maybe, the supernatural fuck-off Trump Tower may have something to do with all of this. But what do I know? It's tower climbing time, baby. At the tower entrance, which is supposedly blocked off by solid concrete, a cutscene plays out.
What?
And who might you be?
Well, I'd rather not say.
Why not? What are you hiding?
We seek access to the tower. Do you think you could help us, miss?
The tower? Huh?
Oh, wait!
So, it's pretty obvious that woman is Flora, right? We all picked that up, yeah? Okay, good. Over at the park, after some sewer diving for the groundkeeper's key, after another cutscene play showing us Don Paolo's scheme to get rid of Layton and Luke.
What on earth?
Professor!
Get away, Luke! Run!
Professor! I think he's chasing after us!
That's preposterous! Blast.
After this fails, the two enter into the newly opened underground, where a room waits, and some sort of personal study is there. Within the back of a picture on the wall is a key shaped like the tower. I wonder what that opens. Now it's really time for the tower. I promise you, this time it's really time for... Oh god fucking damn it. Okay, fine. One last detour to the manor. And I'm not going to lie to you, I'm glad we have this detour. This part is just pure fucking awesome. Chelmy accuses Layton of killing the relative to the Baron because the murder weapon is the vase we picked up earlier from the butcher, meaning it's riddled with Layton's fingerprints. Of course, Layton isn't having any of it and proceeds to absolutely mock Chelmy.
No, Inspector, it has quite a bit to do with you. Meaning? Isn't it obvious? If there is any criminal element involved in this case, then it is you, sir. What? That's absurd.
Hey, calm down.
What utter rubbish! You'll need more than some death charge to save your hide.
Layton points out the flaw in Chelmy's distaste for cakes against a paper article. This Chelmy doesn't even know what his wife's name is. Eventually, this Chelmy has had enough, and rips off a skin suit disguise to show that the inspector was actually Don Paolo this entire time, who then proceeds to just jump out the fucking window. Perhaps the funniest part of this is right after when Luke asks if Layton knows him, he just says, "Fuck no, Lamau." I'm joking. Layton does know him as an exiled brilliant scientist, but genuinely does have no idea what his beef with him is. After this revolution? Huh? Revolution? Viva la revolution! After this revelation, the pair can finally be free to explore the tower. and it shows how close we are to the end of this game because a lot of the mysteries that we've been collecting have been getting crossed off. The last section of the tower should basically just be called exposition time. While it is a gauntlet of puzzles, 5, it's also a place for Luke and Layton to talk and cross off mysteries and, just swap ideas. In the end, we reach the very top, the last place the golden apple could be.
It's you! What's this? What's going on here?
My boy, what you see here is the golden apple herself.
Yeah, Flora was the golden apple all along. And then this happens. There's no words to explain how comedically awesome this is.
What's going on? Oh!
Here I come! Ready or not!
Follow me! Come now.
Professor!
Luke, go ahead without us! I have an idea!
But...
We're fine! Go on!
all right!
It's all right, dear. This way. Layton, I'll smash you right out of the sky! No! This isn't over yet, Layton! Just you wait! One day, I will have my revenge on you! Hold tight!
After all the action, Luke and Layton arrive back at the manor and flick a switch leading to the back room full of, well, let's just say this guy was fucking loaded, to say the least. And, joking aside, what comes next really does give us the first glimpse of the beauty of Professor Layton's storytelling. Baron Reinhold was told he did not have long left to live, and managed to come to terms with it. However, with his wife dead, he couldn't leave Flora on her own. So with the help of 2 men, he built the whole of the village just so Flora could have a place to belong. Oh, and each resident, including Viola, is a robot. Yeah. He created these people in order for Flora to have a home without him. That also explains the so-called kidnapper who was a friend of the Baron's in charge of robot maintenance. He kidnaps these robots at night in order to perform maintenance on them. The Baron placed Flora on the top of the tower, behind incredibly hard puzzles, in the hopes that whoever found Flora was both pure of heart and worthy of looking after her. I remember tearing up the first time I figured all this out. It's such a sad but beautiful story of a man who created the impossible just to keep his beloved daughter safe after his death. This is all explained by a voice recording he made, and then goes on to say that his fortune is ours. However, if we touch it or remove a single piece, the city will effectively shut down because the residents have no more need to be awake. I mean, Flora is safe. Evidently, if the treasure's been touched, somebody's found Flora. Flora's safe now. Layton and Luke obviously do the right thing and give control to Flora on what to do with the inheritance, and surprisingly, she decides to leave the village. In one single sole decision, she's given these robotic creations, the one family she's only ever had, a chance at some sort of life. We've seen these people express interests and emotions, so it's not out of the question to assume they may have some sort of sentience. And Flora bravely and independently steps away from her happy village life in order to give them a continued chance at life. And that ending is just beautiful. And with that, the credits roll and the story of Professor Layton and the Curious Village ends. It's not canonically the pair's first outing together, as you'll see later, but it's a great introduction to the duo and their adventures. Curious Village doesn't break the bank with its story or plot progression, as you've probably seen during my short recap, and it's only short, I promise you, because the game itself is the shortest in the series, or one of the shortest in the series. But you know what? I think that's fine. It doesn't need to be this long spectacle just for a first game. It can be short, and it still rakes in, I don't know, it took me, 7-8 hours maybe? But for somebody who doesn't know the puzzles or, wants to go explore and stuff, that could very easily jump up to 10-11 hours. So, an 11-hour first game in the series, just establishing the characters and whatnot, I'd say that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. One of the most important references and inspirations for the storytelling in these games is the likes of Sherlock Holmes, and if you look back at the novels, they all do tend to follow a similar structure. Go in, ask around, find a clue, investigate more, rinse and repeat till the clues start fitting. And of course that's a fine model to follow. It's worked for many years in spy and detective novels. There are tons of similarities between Sherlock's writing style and Professor Layton games. For example, Sherlock is set into a general structure that follows as such. Firstly, they begin with John Watson narrating the novels in first person. While not seen as much, it's established that these games are meant to be a series of letters written by Luke to the player. The books then start properly with some sort of client or the police or anything like that presenting a case to Sherlock and Watson. Again, we have Lady Dahlia sending over the letter. Then there's an extended flashback, namely only 3 of the 4 Sherlock books use this motif, that being Study in Scarlet, Sign of Four and Valley of Fear. These sections take the focus from the present story and focus onto the history or background or even the killer's motives, which hilariously is usually centered about their want for revenge, which most of these later games also do follow, at least the first 3 center around revenge. Then finally comes the big climax where the villain is confronted, figured out, and an explanation for them is given to clear up any residual questions the player may have. You've seen this done a million times in films. Then there's usually a little epilogue from Watson, or in this case Luke, that finishes off the story. It's hard when pointed out like this to ignore the similarities between the writing styles of both, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. Sherlock did eventually move on and try something different when Conan Doyle wrote The Hound of Baskerville. Instead of flashbacks taking away from the present, the flashback structure took place entirely within the present narrative timeline, and had more organic backstories because of this change. And yet again, this is another technique that, whether through sheer coincidence or meticulous planning, Layton also does, as it expands in its own writing structure and dares to tell more of an adult story with the Unwound Future. Again, not to suck off the third game too much, but it's then that the creativity behind the story really does branch into its own, creating something similar to that of Steins Gate, which would probably be the closest comparison, and we all know how fucking gut-wrenching Steins Gate was to watch. The next on the list is Professor Layton and a Diabolical Box, or Pandora's Box, depending on what region you brought it. But I'll get to that soon. The Curious Village was a resounding success among most critics, clearly showing that Akihiro Hino, Tatsuya Shinakai, and the whole Level 5 team were onto something great. I just realised I pronounced that wrong. Tatsuya Shinkai. Sorry, Tatsuya. Forgive me. It's Shinkai. Perhaps most strangely was the only thing that was really criticised was the soundtrack. Tomohito's French-influenced OST for the game was labelled by Square Enix Music Online as a bland collection of repetitive and similar tracks, and many other sites and critics mirrored this sentiment. Now, I have just played through this and recorded it all in one sitting, and to be honest, yeah, they're kind of right. The music does loop and repeat a lot. The official album for The Curious Village boasts 26 unique tracks, all collecting up to around 76 minutes. For a 10-hour game, or even more depending on how well you can solve puzzles, it's a little short, and then repetitive tone does kick in quite quickly, to be honest. That doesn't mean the music is bad by any margin. In fact, I love this game's soundtrack. But you can only hear a soundtrack so many times before it gets a little irritating. Aside from the music bashing, The Curious Village received resounding universal praise, with most companies like IGN or Nintendo themselves ranking it a high 8 to 10 on their scale. It was clear that Professor Layton was not ready to hang up his hat yet, and with that, the diabolical box was greenlit into production.